Everything you said was right about that. Cookies, though, are also a delicious baked treat. Is a file from applications that are stored on your computer. So cookies are basically when you log into something, when you use any application, and it remembers who you are, it remembers your data, it remembers anything about you that you've done on that application. All that comes from a cookie. So applications are normally, or web applications especially, are normally known as stateless applications because you don't hold any data from the application in the browser. So for a website like GitHub to remember who I am, GitHub had to write logic in the background to store my information in a cookie. So if you ever, you're free to look at this as well on your computers to see what your GitHub says. But if you ever want to look and see what your cookies look like, you go to application, cookies, and then they'll have like a cookie session here. And this is what your cookies look like. Let's make it a little bigger. There we go. So a cookie is a key, it's a hash is what it is at the end of the day. It's a key and it's a value. So there are values that are, in most cookies, super encrypted. So it's a bunch of this gobbledygook. But there's also cookies that are pretty simple. I don't particularly like that they've done this, but I thought it was a good example for you to understand really what cookies look like. So this is the user ID. I am IXNP on GitHub. That's me. So it's stored here. And I am logged in. Your level of cookies will probably, and sessions will probably look more like this. We'll go a little bit into authentication and authorization tomorrow, and we'll talk a little bit about bcrypt and what encryption is and how to do that with passwords. But I really don't expect you to have something like this for your project. If you just want to have something that's a simple like login, remember my name, that's it. With encryption, there's a lot to go over and a lot of people who've worked really hard on it. So while there is encryption that we will teach you here, again, for your Mod 2 project, I'm not expecting you to implement it. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like if I'm not logged in though. So, exit. Has anyone ever used incognito mode? So, looking at GitHub again, since GitHub's not tracking me in incognito mode and thinks I'm a completely new person, let's look at application cookies. So, you can kind of see like my username's not stored in here anymore. There's a lot of missing data that you saw from my logged in browser that's not here. You also don't see my username and stuff like that. So, does the kind of idea of how websites use cookies make sense now? Does anyone who has a computer want to look up some random website and see what their cookies look like for a second? By that I mean, please look up a random website of your choosing, a blog, or take a look at the cookies for a second. Just look to see what those blogs store, see if there's anything you can identify or anything that like looks interesting. We use Twitter, Facebook. If you don't have a computer, kind of look over someone's shoulder while not coughing on them, hopefully.
Weird to get like a learn more button when you're on the cookies page and it's back, it's just like learn more, but it doesn't show the cookies.
Oh, let me see. They might be doing something
Oh,
extra.
draw on the right.
Like that's next to
Oh, really?
Is the arrow next to cookies?
Yeah.
like a unit of measurement?
On size here.
Yeah, is that like kilobytes or something, or bigger than that?
You know, honestly, I don't know. It would make sense to be something like that, but you can always Google it.
Yeah. Size of cookies.
Mm.
Probably pounds.
Mm.
Oh. Up to 4,096 bytes,
Mm.
which is 4 kilobits.
Yeah. So that would probably make sense then. Cookies. I always dream of bringing cookies to this lecture, but I always forget, so I'm sorry ahead of time. But yeah, so that's what kind of the information cookies are, or how big cookies normally are. Normally it's very small amounts of information, just so you're not taking up a ton of space on the user's computer. People tend to get upset if that happens. Video games do that sometimes, and then they call up Steam support, or write Steam support, and then they yell at me for hours, and it's great. True story, but all right, so generally in cookies, you're probably just going to store your user's ID or like any small bit of data that you need that you can later reference and look up in your database. So that's generally why it's just small things like this, like, is a user logged in? No. What's a user's name? It's this. What's a password? Something like this. So now that we've actually seen cookies in practice, let's talk about how we do the same thing in Rails. So we use server-side sessions in Rails, which is something that will allow you to set and keep cookies. This is our subbots for today. Can we see them? Nope. Oh, let's make them bigger. I would like to grab this, please. One day I will get a mouse for this, but for now I'm just like going to stand here and suffer as I try to open this. Great. Cool. Fine. There we go. There. Anyways, so you'll be able to explain how HTTP is stateless. That was kind of the explanation of why browsers don't retain data and why we need cookies and sessions. We'll kind of explain how applications use sessions, which we kind of went over already, but more importantly, we're going to implement sessions in Rails, and we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between Flash and sessions. So when we're thinking about our applications, if I look at our tacos controller from last time, if I put a link in my tacos index in the view that links to show, will I have access to tacos, which equals all tacos in show? No. We won't.
That'd be so cool.
It would, if only there was something that could hold that information for us. But yeah. So we won't have access to all tacos in show. This is something that will only last for that specific request. So in order for us to actually have access to something like tacos or any variable, what are some things that we can do? Besides, obviously, cookies, that's what this lecture's titled. Like, what are some other things before you knew about cookies that you might have tried? Yeah, a class variable. What's the problem with that, though? So class variables why are they called class variable? Are you okay?
I have my funny bone.
Oof.
Stupid ball.
Dang the wall for being there. If only it wasn't there. So that I like your idea of a class variable, and I like where you're going with that. It's something that it is easier to access for more items within this model and controller. But what if you want to access that variable in other classes and other models? Unfortunately, a class variable is scoped to that class. So if we want to use another type of variable, we need to go a little bit higher than the class that we're in, and we also need to use something else. So A local global variable, do you hear? Yeah, that is another thing you can use. That technically will work, but there is some dangers in using global variables in any language, so we try to avoid that as much as possible. So, is there anything that you can think of that may already transfer information from like method to method that you've seen before, may have used?
Flash.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly it. Flash is similar to sessions in that it's a hash that gets kind of either transferred or retained. So Flash, you could either end up sending, we didn't write it in this one, but you can send the errors to the new model, new view, or you can send it to the show view, but it only lasts for that specific request. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a bybug here and show you what the session, yeah.
So using Flash, I don't know if anyone else ran into this,
Mhm.
but Hal thought it was it seemed to be a Chrome thing.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of holding on to the
Oh, yeah.
messages.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with that? Because you're not going to have your user getting rid of their history. It's like a
Yeah.
very annoying experience when your errors keep showing up.
Yeah, so I actually ran into that, remember, doing lecture, and me and Sundari had to sit down for like an hour trying to figure out what was happening, and what we determined was that was caused by my form nesting, actually, and if I had it outside my form, it didn't end up happening. So did it happen for you like that? Or, yeah. Was it nested in your form, or was it outside? Yeah. So ideally, it shouldn't be doing that. It's really weird that it is. So is it all right if I take a look at your code after class and maybe try to debug and see what's going on? Because I thought it was the history as well, but we couldn't find a way because I closed my computer, I cleared everything, there was no way I could get rid of it. It was just somehow stuck in Flash for some reason. So it's a very interesting bug. Ideally, it shouldn't work like that, and I know that's not like the greatest answer to hear, but I'll try to figure out like what is actually causing that. And once we do, is it all right if I kind of talk to the class about it? Cool.
One solution to that was
Yeah.
just define,
Yeah.
if it was successful, to define Flash message it as a point array.
Yeah.
So we just reset it to
That's a good fix to that. I like that problem solving. Alright, so. Let's move pages. So we have our taco truck, beautiful as always. Let's go to the show page in that and look at our bybug. So, oh, that is small. So Flash looks like this. It is an object. It's pretty small. Currently, there's nothing in it, and it equals nil because we don't have any errors that's transferring from method to method. Now, sessions. Yes, I mean session. This is our session. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. There are ways to break into sessions and set your headers in your sessions manually. I'm not going to walk you through that because Rails does it for you. And as you can probably guess with how much information is here, it's kind of annoying. It's something people used to do a lot more back before Rails or other applications like it existed. But Rails now gives us the tools to use it, and it's not something I really want to put you through. So, there's so much stuff. How long have I been scrolling? Yeah, that's a lot of sessions. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah. That's what your object looks like. Yeah, I'm trying to see, there's so much in here. You can see the rack version, versions of different software that's remembering, and then a lot of encrypted stuff. That's what most of these random numbers are. So, let's see here. Wait, I think it's API false. You can see my username, some file structures. Yeah. Sessions can store a lot. So, how do we make use of that in Rails then? Well, continue. So, we're going to write an example that uses sessions to update a cart. Because you've been to Amazon, Etsy, some more ethical like shopping site where you add to a cart, it remains, you leave the page, you come back, it's still there. So how do we do that? The first thing that I'm going to start doing is by making a cart controller ahead of time and throw it in here. Now, I'm not making a cart model because I don't need my cart information to be saved in the database. That is an unnecessary query that I don't necessarily need, and it would take up more time to go to the database, fetch my user's current cart information instead of saving that information in a session. So I'm just going to store it in my cart controller. I'm going to create a update here that I'll hit. I'm going to create a cart, and I'm probably going to define that to an object, and then I'm going to do some stuff where I put our information into the cart. This doesn't actually work like this in the way that I want it to, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to do. We'll write this out again. So before I dive into that, in order to hit a method inside of a controller, what do I need to fix? Routes. Let's go down to routes. Config. I just love that jackhammer, don't you? Just every day, all day, for hours on end. You can hear it in every single room. It's beautiful. So I'm going to make a patch request. And this patch request is going to go to /cart. And we're going to have it go to our cart at update, correct, thank you. Awesome. So that's pretty much all we need for this. It's a very custom route, so you shouldn't need much. But let's go ahead and add a button to our views. Our views are up here. What am I doing? Views, here is our index, taco view. So inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and make a button that redirects to our new path. So has anyone run into this in labs before when they try to do a redirect with a button? Done it at all? No? Okay. You'll probably run into this in your project a little bit, where you're trying to figure out when to do a redirect, but this button, we're going to create a button 2. So you haven't seen this at all? All right. So this is very similar to a link to, but it's a redirect with a button. So instead of a link, you get a button. That's the difference. So we're going to call this add to cart, just like the link to. The first parameter is what we name, or what our button is going to be called. We're going to put in the route we're going to hit. And now the next part, we're going to talk about the method that we want to hit. So since we're doing a patch, if we did this normally, we go to our browser. Let's get our button back on there. Let me get a look at my syntax there real fast. Routes, update 2. What am I missing? Comma here, right? Cool.
And are we changing the resources there because it's a custom method? Is that right?
Here?
Or changing the routes, sorry.
Yeah, so we're making a custom method to hit this button. This doesn't have a model. It has a controller, but currently the only thing that we really need to use this cart controller for is this one method. So it's not really necessary for us to make a resources. Even a resource only would be a little bit overkill at this point, so a custom route makes sense to me. So if I try to hit that, with our current, we have a no post route. So we need to be more specific with what method we're going to use with our button, since we set it to patch. And the way that we do that is we're going to do comma, method, and then just tell it patch. So now, let's try this again. and you go back to taco. Oh yeah, it doesn't like this right now. That. And oh, I'm forgetting. Yeah, yeah. I just always forget to add those. So let's go ahead and add to cart. Now it's not breaking. Let's add a buy bug in this controller. See if we get to it. Awesome, we hit our patch. So let's kind of check out what we have in params. So currently, we don't really have anything in our parameters. If we're adding something to our cart, what do we need in here? Exactly. So thinking of this kind of like, it's not quite a form. There has to be a way for us to send information over in our parameters. Luckily, it's not super complicated for us. It's just going to be something like params, and we're going to go ahead and put our object in here. Now, I did say object, but unfortunately, parameters cannot hold an entire object. If you think about your URL and what you put in with that, what it can take is a string. So what kind of information should we send our parameters that's going to help us identify something specific to the database that we need to get? ID. I like ID, yeah. So taco.id. Let's hit that route again. Yeah, I need to exit out of this, go back to tacos, refresh tacos. And let me make sure param's correct. We have params, taco ID. Add to cart. There we go. There's our taco ID. Dope. So in my update, if I'm going to make a cart, I want to use a hash. Now, I've seen this done with an array, but because it's a cart, I'm going to keep track of multiple instances of the items I'd like to put in it. So, like, I don't want to order just one taco. I want to order, like, 3 tacos, right? So, and a cart would make more sense to me for that. So what I'm actually going to put in is I'm going to put a hash in my cart that has the cart or the item's actual ID as the key, and then as the value, I'm going to have the number of items that are inside or that I want to order. So in this case, I would write cart params at taco _ID. So I'm saying, has anyone seen code that's going to look like this? So if in my cart I have a params taco ID that already exists, if I have a key that exists there, I'm going to add 1. So what? Oh, sorry. So thought I hit something. All right. So else, if it doesn't exist, I'm going to set it to our cart, and then I'm going to have it equal 1. So if you haven't seen this before, you will probably end up using this a lot for algorithms specifically when building out a hash. So I want to take a second to look at this and ask if it makes sense to everyone or if it confuses anyone at all. Is there any questions you want to see? Do you want to see a buy bug in it before we move on? Or does it make sense? Okay. Yeah.
If you're setting your cart to an empty hash,
I like that. Yeah. So I was going to ask after, what is the problem with setting our cart to an empty hash during this? It will reset to an empty hash every single time, right? So it doesn't work to have your cart defined in here. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and put my cart someplace else where everything will have access to it. So in the idea that I want multiple controllers, maybe I have tacos, maybe I serve hot dogs, maybe hamburgers, maybe I'm Costco, who knows. I want to be able to create all my models and have them all use the same cart. So I am going to actually use the controller that these will inherit from. So someone asked me at some point, like, why do we have the application controller? Do we use it for anything ever? This is what we use it for. So inside of my application controller, I'm going to comment this out for right now. I'm going to build a couple things. The first thing I'm going to build is a method that builds me a cart. And what this does is it is going to check to see if the cart exists. If it doesn't exist, it's going to make it an empty hash. If it does exist, it's going to return the hash. So we're going to say cart or equals empty hash. So who has seen this? You covered in mod 1? Slightly? Okay. So there are some things that make Ruby more efficient, or any language more efficient. This is actually, you'll find stuff like this in JavaScript as well. This is an or equals, so this is saying, basically, if this cart exists, return that cart, or do this instead. We're going to assign it to a empty hash if that cart does not exist. Cool. Great. So now, as we talked about before, we could create a variable that's global, or we could create a variable that's a class variable, but we want to store this cart information in our sessions. So in order for us to access that hash and put something in it, we're going to do session and give it a key of cart. So it's going to look into our sessions. If there's a cart key that exists, it's going to ignore this, but if there's not, it's going to set it to an empty hash. So my next trick, I'm going to add a taco method to a cart. Now, if I was being more dynamic, I would probably just name this item to a cart, honestly, but I'm just going to use tacos right now. So I'm going to pass this a item ID because I'm going to call this someplace else. And this is where I'm going to put my logic that says if our cart at item ID, so if our cart at a key of item ID exists, we are going to say cart item ID plus 1. Else, I hate this. Why does it do that? Okay. Why? Else we're going to create that cart item and set it to 1. Or cart key, set to 1. Cool.
So, just really quickly, with
Yeah.
this, we're setting the quantity of this specific item in the cart,
Yeah.
right?
So you could do this any way that you wanted. Like I said, some people, I've seen an example that uses just an array. But for our purposes, I really wanted to keep track of the quantity of items that we have. So this is the one way that I can do that. You could have done it in an array with a nested array, and the first element of the array being the key, the second being the like number of items. You've done it any number of ways, but the reason we're doing this specific way is because I want to have a key that is the item's ID, and then a value that is the number of those items. Leaf, you look so comfortable. Okay. So,
Question.
yeah.
Why in line 3 does cart have a single sign but instead of
Mm.
does not?
On 3 here and on what?
And then like item ID.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
So sessions is a hash, and a cart is a key in that hash. Item ID is something we are going to pass our taco at cart. So we're going to call this in our cart update. We're going to pass it a taco ID, and then that variable is going to represent that ID and be called here. So
But isn't that also going to be a key in the hash?
it is going to be a key in the hash, but we're going to be passing that key through the value of our variable. So this variable represents that key. Yeah. So it's just like, it's a placeholder, essentially, that's saying later this is going to be something else that you'll be able to use. But in order for me to reference it, I need this to have the same name. Cool. Cool. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to our cart controller. We're going to call our taco cart instead of here. We're going to pass it our params at taco_ID. And that should hopefully work. Let's go ahead and see. We're gonna need a buy bug in this first, so we can actually prove to ourselves it's working. Too many buy bugs. Alright. Once more. Fresh. And add to cart. Alright, awesome. So let's check out our sessions. So let's see if sessions at cart exists. So yes, I mean session. So let's see. Looks like this didn't get created yet. Continue. Go for it. What were your thoughts?
You first called sessions cart.
When I did sessions over here.
No, in your buy bug was called sessions.
Oh, I just misspelled sessions, and then I did it pluralized instead of session. That was the issue. So. Let's see, that should be true, that should work. Let's see, one more time. There's our cart. So, the reason, the key's messed up, but the reason that happened is the session has to complete before it goes into session, so I needed it to run once before it actually went in. So, looks like my key's upset, so let me see. Make sure this got passed correctly. Check out params, tacos ID. Am I passing tacos ID through my cart controller? Params, taco ID. Tacos ID. That's why. Add to cart. And session. Out of let it finish. Once more. I love area-driven development. That's it. And go. Still not having it set correctly. One second. Application controller. Buy bug. Let's remove our buy bug from here. Our buy bug from here. And add to cart. I believe in you. We should. There it is. We are getting our item ID. Mm. There it is. I don't know why it took that many sessions to restart it. Probably because my Bobby bug was screwing it up, but nonetheless, it's there. So there's our cart ID. There's our number. We got it. Cool. So now that we have our ID and our numbers, we need to do something in order to get that. So what we're going to do is we're going to define something that will get our items from our cart. Let's go ahead and build something out in our view so we can actually see the items come up. So inside of our index, let's go ahead and create a cart. And I'm going to wrap this in a div. As you start doing more HTML and CSS, you'll start to create container elements that help separate your elements out for styling later. We don't really care about that right now, but I'm just going to start adding them to get in the habit so they exist and you can start working with them later. So.
Anyway, is this further?
Okay, so inside of our cart, we're going to need something here. So if we send something to our cart, what do we need to access here?
Sessions cart.
Our sessions cart, that's a good idea. But, so our sessions is that giant hash, right? So we could try accessing sessions cart here. But what I would like to do is I would like to control what's in that sessions cart. And currently the only thing that's in there is our key and our value of amount. So if I do sessions cart, this is the only thing that's going to show up, right? So we need to query that from our database first. So I like where your thoughts went there, but we still have to go back here. And we're going to use this get items from cart. We're going to create a variable called cart items. Now this will be you will be able to access this at any point in your controller because it's in the highest level. So we'll go into an index. So we could do tacos dot find. And then we're going to, if I had done array, I could just put cart, but I'm going to do cart.keys. So, has anyone used .keys before on an object? Yeah, cool. So, what does it do?
Returns the keys.
Yeah, it returns the keys in an array form, right? So, you can pass, I'm not sure if any of you have used it like this yet, but you can pass an entire array through find in order to pull up all your items. So, I'm also going to create a total. And I'm going to set that to 0 because since this is a cart, I kind of want to know how much everything costs. And I'm going to go ahead and do some math here. Since I have the multiple instances of our item or the amount that we're buying, I'm going to go through our cart items. And I'm going to create a variable called item price to keep track of what our total item price will be. And I'm going to say cart at taco.id.toString because our cart's actual variable, or sorry, our cart's key is going to be in a string form. So if I pass a number through here, which is what I would get with taco ID, then it wouldn't work. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to multiply it by our taco price. So does that make sense here? Okay. And we're going to do taco dot amount. Because I added back while y'all were doing labs, added a property called amount to our taco schema. So if I look at my schema, amount's going to be there. So that's where one place to store our amount. But we're not sending it to the database simply because we don't want to store that information there. But I want to access a property of amount super easily, so there's ways to also have merged hashes and stuff like that, but that was a little too much work for me, so I just put it there. So amount is going to equal our cart at taco ID to string, because that is where we stored our amount, and then our total is going to be plus equals item price. Or, sorry, yeah. So, Toco, line 20? Toco, taco. Yeah, I was looking at the normal taco. I was just like, how did I misspell that? What could be wrong? All right. So, again, going over this once more, we are going to find all of our taco items from our database. We're going to put it into this taco variable. We are going to set a total to 0. We're going to iterate through our items. Every time we are on an item from our database, we are going to multiply the number of items in our database, or our amount, by the price that was stored in our database. We're going to take that price, we're going to add it to our amount, because it's going to be temporary anyways, and we're going to then take our items price and we're going to add that to total. Is anything about this, any line unclear, we can talk about it a little bit more. It's a lot in a block.
You're using the taco amount for something, or is it?
We're going to use it to display on the page, so we can see how many tacos, because we could just say tacos, but like it'd be kind of confusing if we had $70 for what looked like one taco, so.
The taco.price,
Mhm.
where did that come from?
That's something that I also added in the schema that I should have gone over in the beginning. So we added price and we added amount here at the very beginning, before lecture started. So those are just two items that I added to our tacos to kind of make this lecture a little bit more useful.
What's the difference between those two?
The amount is the number of tacos that we have. The price is how much each of those tacos cost. So the amount is not something I really need to save in the database because it's something that's temporary. It's something I only want to keep in sessions because I want the user to be able to clear it easily without having to make another query to our database, right? What's up?
Not to be nitpicky, but like,
Yeah.
is it good methods to store the price? Well, price for the taco makes sense. But
Yeah.
the amount of tacos in your taco,
So,
wouldn't you want to like actually be storing that in your cart or order or something?
So, I mean, that's a good point, but I don't have a cart model. So if I had a cart model, that would be a great place to put that. So
Okay.
if you do this for a project, that's a great argument for why you need a cart model. Plus, you need 5 models. Anyone who's making an e-commerce store might be a good idea. But yeah, no, that's good thinking. That's proper development. But here, this is just a quick, easy way to put this on here. And it was being lazy. So, okay, cool. That being said, anything else about this block of code that doesn't make sense? I'm happy to put bugs in before we move on.
I'm confused by like line 20, like how that gets stored into the amount without the taco price part. Like, does the taco price, has that already been calculated into that key value pair there?
Yeah. So let's take a look at this in our bug actually. So I'm going to call get items from cart inside of our tacos controller at index to just run it. for right now. When we want to run, because we're not going to want the cart and everything, right? So we only want it in our index page where we're going to store it. But I'm going to use this to hit the buy bug real fast. So exit out of current buy bug, goodbye buy bug, and let's refresh this. We should hit that sessions at some point. It's getting to the point in my lecture where this is very, okay. So, application, it's breaking on items cart. So, found, okay. So this was from my bug earlier where I coded in that key. So if you have to reset your sessions manually, let's go ahead and put this buy bug up one. So there might be times in your development that you do what I did. You code in a bug in your session, or you need to reset your sessions. So in order to do that, let's go back one. Let's refresh to our tacos. So in order to grab our session and reset our cart, so this part is what's causing our bug here, right? Because there's no ID in our database of blank. So to reset that, we're doing session, we're going to select cart, session.delete, and then we're going to pass in cart. And that should get rid of that. We don't have our sessions left anymore. So now we can restart. Now, let's go ahead and throw that buy bug back down here so we can take a look at what's going on in this. Oh, QuickTime. Can you slow down my computer so much? So this should be called when I simply go to our index route, tacos, because I called it over here, up here. So we're not currently adding anything to our cart yet. So we can try adding something to our cart. So this was back up here. Let's remove this buy bug and continue. All right. And once more. Finally. Okay. So let's take a look at what's going on here. So item underscore price. Items underscore price is 10. So taco.id is going to be 14. If I pass cart at taco.id instead of here, I'm going to get nil because this needs to be a string. So I'm going to put 2s here, and that will bring us our proper cart taco ID. So
And is that the ID, or is that like the amount of that taco?
So this is the ID. So the amount is going to, this is the ID, this is the amount.
Yeah. That's
So when you call a chunk like this, what this is saying is I want to look in my cart, I want to find this ID, and this bit of code here is going to equal what that value is. So that's what that's saying. So when we do go into our database and we need to find or use our keys specifically, that's why we have to use something like .keys. Because when we put a hash in like this is only accessing the value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I was confused on the 21 because I thought it was like taco price equals that, but
Yeah.
I get it now because it's just taco amount
Mhm.
equal to that. So like at that key of the cart, it's just going to give you the amount of the taco with that ID.
Exactly.
So it makes sense now. But
Cool. Yeah. Let's just look at them to kind of drill that point home. Oh, you tried to help me. Is it still amount out? Yeah. Taco dot amount. There we go. 1. All right. Cool. Let's make sure total is correct as well. Total's 10. Awesome. Continue. So now that we have those stored in our stored here, let's go ahead and throw it on our page. So inside of here, we are, because we called this in our tacos controller, we now have access to everything in here. So we're going to have access to at cart and total. So in here, I can say, not in there, here. I can say at cart items. I'm going to do this in some squids. So since I have multiple cart items, I'm probably going to want to iterate through it, right? So at cart items dot each. I'm going to pass it a taco. Beautiful. Put this here. There we go. And from that taco, I'm going to display a couple things. I'm going to nest this in LI. I am going to want the name of my taco, which currently we're only storing our taco's meat as our main identifier. So it's going to be taco.meat. And then I'm going to want to, and I'm putting this in just so it's a way to make this more human readable, because it already looks kind of like garbage, but I want to be able to read it. We're going to use our taco amount that we just found. And we're going to add our price. So it looks about right. So let's check it out in review. We make sure you don't have any dumb buy bugs left. All right, cool, we have our cart. It looks very small, but it's down here, but we have our item. Let's go ahead and throw a total at the bottom of our cart so that's being displayed as well. I'm gonna put this in some, have you seen order lists yet? Where they, instead of giving you bullets, it gives you numbers. I think that might look a little better on receipt, so. And at the bottom of this, let's go ahead and do, let's store in a paragraph tag. Our total. Taco. At total. Let's put $sign in front of that. So, $sign. Cool. So now I can, every time I refresh this, I go to a different page. I take my buy bugs out of everything else I don't need. Continue. And then I go back. I still have my cart there. It didn't get lost. It's not gone forever. I now have access to this here while I navigate to other pages. So, and that's Sessions. So this is something you are going to want to make use of in your project, especially if you have something like an e-commerce site, or you have something that needs to keep track of that information. This is something we're kind of going to expect you to have in your project, most likely. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be something as simple as this, as creating a total for something, or maybe you use it on your analytics page so you can find all that information about that user. But is there anything about Sessions you would like to ask? Yes.
Is this similar to how you keep track of a login?
Yes, it's exactly, you would exactly use this for a login, and we'll get more into that tomorrow with authentication.
What would you be saving for a login?
Well, what do you need from a user to identify all their stuff?
A username and password.
Mm-hmm. So on login, if you log in, you query your user and you grab their stuff from the database, things like their user ID, things like any orders they might have, depending on the page, like anything that might be small enough for you to save in sessions, you can use. But what is most frequently saved in projects in Mod 2 is something like the user ID. That way, the user doesn't have to continually log in every time they want to access stuff, but you have routes that are protected, so you aren't seeing other user stuff. That make sense? Yes, or would you like me to explain it again using different words?
That makes sense.
Okay. Sometimes I know I get a little like rambly and my words are backwards, so if you ever need me to restate something differently, just let me know. Okay. Anything else I can explain with sessions? And again, reminder, authentication and authorization will be tomorrow. So any more about passwords and stuff like that and logins and saving a user's information after login is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But I'm happy to speculate and talk with you about it if you have more questions.
Are you looking for that in the project as well?
So I would expect something like sessions to be used and for you to save the user ID. I won't expect you to encrypt the user's password.
Okay.
So that's going to be the main thing.
Can you go over the button too?
Yeah. So button 2, inside of our index here. So this is exactly like a link to. So in a link to, you have the first parameter being the name of whatever is going to go on that link or button. The second parameter being the route that you want to hit. And in our case, we made a custom route, so /carts makes the most sense, right? And the only thing that's different is we need to change the method on this button. So what happened before when we hit the button is it went to a post route, which we didn't have. We wanted a patch route because we were updating something on our cart. So we put in as a next parameter, method patch. And then the last part is the params that we're passing with our buttons. A button isn't a full form, it's just a link to. It's something that's kind of way simpler. And so when we're passing in params, we want to pass something small and it has to be a string. So inside our params object, we're going to pass it a string with our taco ID because it's small, it's easy to send over, and it's not an entire like object or array. So we can't really send those things over. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
come to your cart methods?
Sure. Right now all I have is update with this add cart controller.
And then you also go to we have online page.
Oh, so in the application controller? Yeah. So, yeah.
Say you wanted to show them how many items of each type they had in their cart.
Yeah.
As well as the amount. That would go and get added to a cart, right?
Yeah, so you could do it from add to cart, or so if you wanted to total all the items from the amount and put that in on the page, or
Like you show them how many chicken tacos they have or how many.
yeah. So in ours we put it into, so our cart stores the amount as well as the value. So if we wanted to put that on the page, we would just do it like we did down here where we did taco.amount equals cart taco ID's values. You could also write your own method that with something like total item count, which took an item and just returned the count. So you would grab the item and then put the cart and look for the item in it to just get that amount. So that's one thing you can do. Or you can do it like we did down here, where we put the cart ID in our total in our taco. And this is just so I wanted easier access to the amount here. Does that clear it up, or did I not answer that question at all?
I mean, that makes sense.
Okay.
How you might do it, but like, can you do it?
To make so you can view the amount on the page?
Yeah.
Currently we should have that up there. See, chicken amount 1. Or did you want to see, like, if I had chicken, 2 chickens, 3 beefs,
Yeah.
and then at the bottom have the total of like.
No. What you're doing there, I just don't understand where that's coming from.
Oh, it's coming from. Yeah.
Oh, the amount. Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's coming from this line right here, exactly. Actually.
Cool.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else over here?
How would a
We haven't programmed something in here for that yet, but what I would do is go to tacos, go to tacos view. So we have a button that links to add an item to a cart. We could probably code out something like this. And if we're starting to do this anyways, it might be better to make a cart model at this point. Have a button that on the cart route, if the method is delete, go to our application controller or our cart controller, have a delete method here that would do some delete logic. Does that make sense? That clears the cart. So that's, in our cases, setting, you remember that sessions thing I did in the controller where it was sessions dot delete and then taco or whatever, cart in our case. Cool. Sweet. All right. Happy projects. Let me know if you have any other questions. Feel free to DM me and remind me to follow up with you about the flash problem. I can see what's going on if I can use the fix that we used with